So let's go ahead and get started. I think we've got a lot of people on. Thank you for being on with us. Thank you for being on time. So this is a continuation in our every other month web forums. So we are developing these forums from feedback from the programs. We continue to welcome feedback so that we can plan these as we go according to what you all have coming up in the field. Today we're going to be talking about RPE in rural communities. If you weren't on our last web forum, it goes like this. We have two organizations that are going to do a quick overview of their programs and the challenges and successes and strategies they have working with their RPE program in a rural community. And then we're going to open it up to all of you to be able to share your challenges, get ideas, share tips that have really worked for you all. So it can potentially be a little unruly on a webinar like this, but we'll go between the chat at the end and people will be able to chime in on audio also. So I appreciate that because I think it's easier to talk through it, but the chat works great too. So this is just an opportunity for everyone to be able to have a touch point with one another in between the times that we get to be together in person. So with that, I want to introduce our two programs. We have today with us Kathy Bowerland and Devin Siekerka. I hope I did it right. Devin, are you unmuted?
Yeah, you did it perfectly.
Yay! Okay. And they're going to talk about their programs, and I'm gonna let them start with Kathy.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome. So my name is Kathy Borland. I'm the Education Coordinator at the Center, and I actually have over 30 years of experience delivering services through nonprofits in rural areas. But I should probably tell you where we're located. As you can see, we're considered to be in the northern region of the Sierra Nevada Mountains in California, which is also known as part of the Gold Country. We're about due east of Sacramento, and we serve only the western slope, not Lake Tahoe, so everything kind of from the snow line down. Although the population of the county is around 183,000, the three schools that we have our program in are very small. Two are sort of in rural suburbia. You kind of know what that is. But the one we spend most of our time in is literally located in the middle of farmland and vineyards. So it's pretty small. And I just want to tell you that I've approached this presentation in terms of how we provide services and how we've evolved based on our lessons learned. So we call our program TEACH, so you'll be hearing me talking about TEACH. But it is not an acronym. We're simply known as the TEACH program. We began several years ago when the center was doing an 8th grade pull-out program for high-risk girls in a small school called Gold Trail. While it's a middle school, it serves 4th through 8th graders, and today has probably around 400 students. So back in 2012, I met with the principal to discuss our program and what he felt the needs were at the school. And at that time, he was very interested in anything around bullying, which was the term of the day. And we actually used the term peer abuse instead of bullying. And at that time, schools were required to have some set-aside time for teaching kids anti-bullying skills. And the principals and teachers said that teachers really didn't like teaching the soft skills. So my background is in child development, and I suggested that we address risk and protective factors of peer abusive behavior at an early age with the teacher's presence. So we talked a lot about the correlation between bullying behaviors and potential abusive behaviors in their teen years, in the 7th and 8th grade. And the first year of our program was really important, especially with teachers. I worked only in the 5th and 6th grade and developed a relationship with the 5th grade master teacher and often sought her advice. She became our biggest ally and pulled for our program when we started after that first year. So at the time, that really made me think about how important relationships were, especially in rural counties. Those are probably paramount to everything. So I realized that if I wanted to bring important topics like rape, consent, and coercion in the 7th and 8th grade, we needed to develop really strong bonds with teachers, administrative staff, and even yard duty. Through the years, we've added grades and classes, and we're working with approximately 7 teachers right now. And we've been working really hard on those relationships, which are everything, and they ensure the integrity of our program and have since the very beginning. So we're now considered part of the team at Gold Trail. We are embedded in the school and the culture due to the relationships we've actually developed and nurtured. And to tell you the truth, they've been our greatest support when there are controversial topics in teach. You know that schools in rural areas can also serve as community centers when none exist in that area. Many of the school functions become part of the social fabric of the community. Parents and extended family can literally fill up gymnasiums for just any function. Back-to-school nights are packed. That said, we really try to attend those things. We attend concerts and plays, and we even go to after-school sporting events on occasions. We played on the teachers' baseball team during an annual baseball game with 8th graders. And in fact, my assistant and I just returned from a 4-day camping trip to Yosemite as chaperones where we got to really build even deeper relationships with teachers and also several parents. So we work really hard on our relationships. The second year, we added 4th grade, and the following year when we wrote our RPE, scope of work, I included 7th and 8th grades. One of the assets, I believe, of our program is that we see every student every year throughout their stay at Gold Trail. The current 7th grade will be the first class that we've seen for 5 years after they graduate from 8th grade next year. So it makes for really, really, really rich data. Seeing every student can be a challenge in terms of keeping the program fresh. But the bottom line is we believe that seeing these kids as much as we do is really helpful. Having good relationships and trust from the staff really ensured that expansion. The younger teachers knew what was going on. And we have only expanded to serve we could only have expanded to serve a full school in a rural community just because of the sheer numbers. So we are currently at capacity at Gold Trail where we see over 400 kids in 15 classes. And we provide 45 to 55 minutes each week in the classroom. The program runs 26 to 30 weeks each year, depending on interruptions. And at Camerado Middle Springs, which is another school that we provide services, we do one 7th, 8th grade leadership class. And at Herbert Green Middle School, we do one class of high-risk 7th and 8th grade students. So we have only one class in each of those schools. But we wanted to compare the outcomes of these 2 standalone classrooms to the high dosage at Gold Trail. Both myself and my assistants work together in each one of the classrooms. One of us is lead facilitator, and the other helps and or observes and take notes. A typical session can go like this. Review the last journal's prompt, present the nugget, and do an activity that reinforces the nugget, debrief, and give the next week's journal assignment. The information or topic may be the same in all the classes, but they're kind of age appropriate. So for instance, mindfulness, empathy, positive body image and self-esteem, boundaries, communication, and peer abuse, as well as conflict resolution, are taught in all grades. So some of the pictures you see here are the 7th and 8th graders making mandalas at the beginning of the year. That's a kind of established team and community. Another example is that 4th through 6th graders learn to explore the qualities of friendships, while the 7th and 8th graders have a 6-week series on healthy relationships, and we'll cover everything from dating, red flags, consent and coercion, sexual assault. But how we teach each class may be different from class to class, depending on the maturity. And also, as we learn this year, it may depend on the climate of the school at the time. And each school's climate is different. Even though we live in the blue state of California, our county is red with conservative values. We've had several issues coming up this year that had to do with the curriculum, and you can probably guess what they were. But our 7th and 8th grade teachers are very supportive, and they were warriors for our program integrity. The sex ed manual that Gold Trail adopted this year has a session on healthy relationships that is only a page long. So we actually build on that, and the teachers love it. So the flexibility of the program was really important for teacher and school buy-in. Teachers like what happens in Teach, and they talk about it when we're not there, which is what we want them to do. Again, in rural areas, parents are pretty connected to the schools. They are there every day dropping their kids off and picking them up. In fact, many of them stand outside the office kind of waiting. Teachers are in constant contact with parents, and many live in the same area, so they know parents on a friendly basis, and they often talk to the kids, talk to parents about our program. We also give them additional information about the program, and we keep a lessons outline and integration plan in the office right next to the sex ed binder that parents have access to. We learned this one the hard way. Again, in our area this past year, a couple of students went home to talk to their parents, as we always encourage them to do. And the parents came back to the school to express their outrage at a couple of things their students were learning. You can probably guess what issues they were. So the decision was made not to do anything about what we talked about, but just to keep an outline in the office as a resource and to announce at the beginning of each school year that parents have access to our lessons at any time. So that was a lesson really hard learned. And finally, relationships have helped us in many ways, but decision makers really want to know about outcomes. And members of the school board are often on campus, and we try to make at least one school board presentation every year. We administer an evidence-based program each January to take a temperature of the environment called the Illinois Bully Scale, which assesses students' feelings about victimization, bullying, and fighting in school, and how often they happen. It really gives us a picture of who's bullying, who is being victimized, and who is physically fighting. In addition, for instance, this last year, we knew something was going on in the 5th grade. Student anxiety peaked around election time and kind of went downhill from there. There was also an influx of over 50 kids to the school, which, as you know, really impacts a rural school. Classrooms were made bigger. We saw behaviors that we've never seen in all the years that we've been at Gold Trail. Teachers talked about it. We all talked about it. But it was the numbers that finally validated it, and the 5th grade showed substantial increases in all areas. And we were able to take the data and talk about what was happening. One of the lessons we did learn, especially in this area, was how to present our data. Teachers and administrators see an increase in negative behavior as a reflection of their teaching. So numbers can be really intimidating. And we spent a lot of time talking about what the numbers meant, that this may not be the case, but something was going on, and we really all needed to talk about it. So
Kathy, sorry for the interruption. You have about 3 minutes left.
Okay. The other thing, we do other we do several other things with data, and it's really helped to ensure, for instance, we learned that in classrooms where teachers are really engaged, the student comprehension goes up much higher. But I think the biggest lesson we've learned from data is that it takes a long time, sometimes a very long time, for any change to happen. So I just want to sum up. That was kind of quick, but I want to sum up what I think our best practices are. I think being embedded within the school environment, being able to dose the whole school each week, which could not have happened in an urban area, the strong relations with school staff, and finally the data. So I really want to honor your time today, and I know how busy you all are this time of year, so thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. And I think what we're going to do is if you could, if anyone has a burning question, you can put it in the chat. And then we're going to move on to introduce Devin. Devin, are you unmuted?
I believe so.
Yay.
Yay.
Okay, so Devin from Center for a Nonviolent Community. If you have questions for Kathy, you can put them in the chat and we'll watch for them, but we're going to open up to questions for both Devin and Kathy at the end of Devin's presentation. And Devin, I will pop in and give you a 5-minute time check if you like.
Yeah,
okay.
That sounds good.
Thank you.
All right, so my name is Devin Siekerka. I'm with the Center for a Nonviolent Community in Tuolumne County. And just a little bit of background on our county. You saw at the map, I think, I'll go to that slide again. I think we're about, let's see, I want to say about 2 hours from El Dorado County. So we're not that far away. However, where our county is specifically located is it's about 2 hours away from everything. You know, in our county we have, I think, a Walmart and a Taco Bell, and that's pretty much it. We're about 2 hours away from the closest mall. You know, we have one 2-lane highway going in and out of our county. And we just have under 5,000 people in our main city. So it's a very small city, but we do have about 50,000 people in our overall county. So sorry, I'm jumping around on the slides here. So it's very rural and it's very spread out. So for our kind of school piece, what we did is we implemented a sexual harassment prevention curriculum called Shifting Boundaries. It was at a school called Curtis Creek Elementary. And at that school, it's very, very nice school. I think their campus is spread about 10 acres. I think sit on a very nice piece of land. They have very, green, grassy pastures, and it's really, a great place. However, with our county, we don't have a lot of diversity. We're about 90% Caucasian, and then 2% African American, 2% Native American, and 1% Asian, and then the rest was Latino or Hispanic. So there's not a whole lot of diversity, and because we're in such a private area, a lot of students are very sheltered, and they're very naive and very innocent. So that was kind of the demographic that we are facing with our school. So again, their campus is very rural, and in 2009, we had a meeting with the superintendent of our county. We have a very good relationship, and like Kathy talked about, having a good relationship in a rural community is huge, and that's really what gets you really far. So we had a meeting with our superintendent, and she happened to mention that Curtis Creek Elementary had their first sexual harassment report. And at that time, it was the first report that principal had found and had seen. So they weren't really sure what to do. So I think about 6 months later, they finally dismissed the case as bullying. They said it was kind of a butt tag situation, and they said it wasn't sexual harassment, it was bullying. However, every year since then, there has been multiple sexual harassment incidents reported that haven't been taken care of. So we felt that maybe there was a little bit of a problem, so we wrote this grant to really, hopefully address that situation, because this was a big deal for our small county. So the curriculum, again, it's shifting boundaries, and what we really loved about shifting boundaries is that at the end there's a mapping activity. So we're able to map the school campus, and the students are able to kind of address directly what areas on the campus these things are happening in, where they feel safe and where they don't feel safe. So that was a really, really exciting thing for us. And I'm going to skip a couple slides because not all of these slides directly apply. They're just fun pictures. And there's kind of you can see a little bit of the playground in our school right there in that slide. However, in this pyramid, this is kind of our version of the socio-ecological model, and it provides a little bit more of a background on an overview of our program. So it lays out all of the basic steps that we took for the implementation. So if we start from the bottom, the first step was the administration and policy review. So the first step, was really working with the admin, reviewing their policies, looking for gaps. And what we found is that the school had a very punitive justice or punitive discipline policy. So if a student was to commit an act of sexual harassment, the first thing would be immediate expulsion instead of maybe more positive discipline like being referred to a counselor. And we felt that really working with the policies was super important, because when we're not there and when maybe there's new staff, those policies are still going to be in place. So that was kind of the first step. And then the second step was making sure that the teachers and all the school staff was trained in our curriculum, Shifting Boundaries. So we gave them a project overview similar to this, and we trained them. And then the third step was working on the school campus with the yard duties, and we were able to demonstrate how to really safely intervene with the school and staff when a sexual harassment incident happens. And we were also just able to introduce some fun activities and team building games just to help support a positive and respectful school environment. So we really enjoyed that part of it. And then we also did Girls Circle and the Council. So those are gender-based support groups that really have a great impact on the students. Then we taught the actual Shifting Boundaries classes. And then the second to last step was the Leadership Club. So we implemented a leadership club where students were actually able to focus more on the mapping and get more specific with the hot and the cool spots on campus, or the safe and unsafe places. And then we also had youth leaders. So they were college-age youth that came in, and they were actually able to assist us with all of these things. So that was really, really nice. So that's just a little bit of our program. And now I'm going to talk about challenges. So this year, we faced a lot of challenges with our school. So this year, funding was cut, so they lost their counselor, which was our main contact person. They had a mudslide, which knocked out, I think, 3 buildings. Then they had a fire that burned down about 6 buildings. And it has just been kind of it's been a real challenge. And then they had snow, so the school was closed for quite a long time. So that was actually a challenge, was really being able to get in there and implement your program, especially when you're working out of a grant and you have goals, you have objectives, and that can be kind of scary. But however, the one thing that really helped us be able to get through is our relationship with the school. Because we had such a good relationship with the school, when these things happened, we came to them, we said, what can we do, how can we help? And they actually decided that they really needed grief counseling and grief support for the students and the school staff. So we had our counselors go to the school, and that was really huge, and our relationship has just been great. And then I would have to say that our top 3 best practices, and I hope I'm answering any of your questions, or again, if you have questions, we'll have an opportunity for that at the end. But something that was really, really important for our program, is first we did a community assessment before we implemented Shifting Boundaries, or before we even thought about a curriculum. We did a community assessment to really know our community, because in a rural spot, every place is different. So no 2 rural communities are alike. And then the next thing that we did was we really had a goal of policy change the whole entire time. And for us, that worked great because they were able to implement a new version of their policies and procedures that had a more positive model. So it showed expected behavior of the students versus what not to do. So that was a really good example because, again, when we're not there, when there's new faculty, the policies are still going to be in place. So that was a very important, very, very important thing for us. And then the last one for best practices is your relationships. Your relationships, especially in a rural community, those go the longest. About 3 days ago, we actually ran into the principal of our school in the grocery store, and she, was just talking about all the problems that she was experiencing in the campus and different ideas that, she had that maybe we could come and do. And, regardless of whether or not those were in our scope of work, just to have that relationship and to always have that open dialogue was extremely, extremely valuable. So I think, and let me just double through, and then through the slides, we also did, here's a picture of the mapping activity. And again, in this map, the pink represented the hot areas, the places where the students would feel unsafe, and then the blue was the areas that the students did feel safe. So for most of the campus, this particular student, they didn't feel that safe. So that was kind of a big eye-opener for us. And we also did activities with our school like Unity Day, and here's a picture of the current staff. And a couple students made this poster after we had been implementing our Shifting Boundaries curriculum, so that was pretty cool. And then here's a slide of Girls Circle. And again, not all these slides are super important, but it's really nice to see just some outcomes that students were very passionate about. So we also facilitated Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month. So we went to that school, we did a photo booth, and really the students loved it because we have such a good rapport with them, and it was super enjoyable. So yeah, and then also we were able to speak at the National Sexual Assault Conference, and that's a horrible picture of me, but we were able to do that, and that was really great just to share a little bit about our data and our outcomes and kind of what we learned. So yeah, and I hope that answers it all, and I think that is it for me, I hope, yeah.
Thank you, Devin, for sharing all that. And I'd like to open it up for questions for Devin and Kathy. And you can press, Megan can correct me if I'm wrong, but you can press *6 to unmute yourself, or you can type into the chat. We will do our best to keep our eye on both. And so please, any questions for Devin and Kathy, and I appreciate both of you for your information today. So I have I'll start with a question. You both talked about how important those relationships with teachers, the principal, the counselors, even the school board. What are the ways that you built those relationships, including, I'm guessing, just being in front of them a lot? How do you get time with them? How do you talk to them that they have so many priorities? I know Kathy talked a lot about data, using data to show the importance of the program, but are there any specific things like you walk through the office every morning to make sure to say hi? I mean, are there some little things like that?
This is Kathy. It's kind of hard to say this is how you develop a relationship, but I think teachers are really, because we work with teachers, they're really the experts, and we treat them as such. They're the experts on the kids, and we talk a lot about kids who are having issues, what's going on. So it's really kind of opening their eyes to kind of looking at kids below the surface. They have so many kids they see all day. They have break time, they have lunch times. Sometimes we just sit in the lunchroom with them and we just talk because our lunchroom is pretty small and there's only about 5 teachers at a time. So we'll just go in and we'll talk to them about what's going on. We just seem to make that time. Teachers will stop us. I'm always late for class because teachers are stopping me to tell me something about someone or what they saw. It's really just it's also really good that we have 2 people. I can do that, and then Stevie can go to the classroom. That's really important. I actually will stop the principal we're out there during recess, and I will just stop him and talk to him, and we take time. So I think it's just giving that time to them, and I like what Devin said about the counselors. They're really critical in these programs. Anytime you're in a school, there's not a lot of support in any rural school, so you're really one of the biggest supports at school.
Yeah, and we came across the issue of the school faculty when we first kind of introduced our program. They were kind of worried because the curriculum was developed for New York City, so it's very different than in a rural community. So, at least we had that relationship going where they already kind of trusted us. And like Kathy said, it really boiled down to, giving them that time, having open conversations with them and kind of realizing that, we all kind of have the same goal in mind. But they were kind of worried about the curriculum because it was meant for such an urban area. And, curriculum, they really aren't designed for a rural community. So, having a conversation about that, being able to, adjust that with the principal and go over the things that they felt would be best for their students, that also helped.
That's great. There's a couple of questions in the chat about requesting that you elaborate more on the community assessment. I know, Devin, you spoke about that directly. And then Enrica from CDPH, who's joined us, asking about whether you're implementing any other school-wide interventions from Shifting Boundaries, like the Respecting Boundaries Agreement.
Yeah, so I can speak. So first, the community assessment, we looked at like the California Healthy Kids Survey, which all of the schools in our county take part in. So we were able to kind of see, are the kids feeling safe at, this school, or are they feeling safe at this school? And then there was a bunch of other, there was a lot more data that the superintendent of our county had. So we were able to really kind of understand, more about who we were trying to serve in our county. So that was kind of part of our community assessment. And then we also conducted presentations at a few schools and collected data, from that to see what their knowledge was about things, things relating to sexual violence. And then that's how we kind of chose our school and chose which programs would be best. Even if we had to adapt them. And then for the second question, for Enrica's question, so with Shifting Boundaries, there are multiple levels of interventions, if that makes sense. So there's putting up posters, around the school campus that kind of bring more attention to sexual violence to hopefully get students talking about it. And then there's also a form, it's called the Respecting Boundaries Agreement, and that really helped because especially since this school lost their counselor, they were kind of missing that piece. They actually have a co-leadership, model where they have co-principals. So one principal is trying to, soak up that role as much as possible, but it was kind of difficult. So the Respecting Boundaries Agreement was a form that the students can actually fill out with the principal if they have a boundary violation. So if someone violates their boundary, or they feel that they have violated someone else's boundary, it's a form that they can fill out and really state what happened and kind of get all parties involved. And it's just a very, very good tool for resolving any sort of like boundary violation issue.
I have a question, Devin. When you began with Shifting Boundaries and you were looking at changing policies, did you include, I know you included kids, obviously it sounds like your program is heavily involved with kids, but did you include any other adults on campus or any other like advisory boards or anything like that?
So we did. We talked to the school board first before we were thinking about going into the policies, and the school board was like, yeah, that's totally, they were totally on board, and they really liked that. So then we kind of went to the principals, and we went to the classified staff and the teachers, and we actually talked about it in several of the staff meetings that the school had.
Thanks. So I want to address, there was a question up there earlier from, I believe it was Esther, who said that she said the challenge is when new staff come on and you don't automatically have that relationship, especially when the superintendent changes. I think one of the cool things about small schools is that people don't change like yearly. It's not a yearly thing, but when it does change, it really does. So Esther, this year our principal, who has been so supportive of us, is going to be the superintendent, and a new principal is coming in who knows nothing about our program. And at one of our other schools, at the school where we do high risk, we work with high risk kids, the teacher's retiring and the principal will be new. So we actually will be facing that. And we're hoping to we did some little bit of preventative work when we heard this was being, and we made some connections with other folks to kind of build that kind of coalition. But I agree with you. This will be our first year that we've had like major changes.
If we don't have any other questions specifically for Devin and Kathy, not that they can't contribute answers information, I want to move to the open session. And I also think that Esther's comment about handling transition, we know we have a lot of transition within our own program, many of them, not all of them. And so knowing that those relationships are really key, and schools transition some more than others. But maybe we could open this up to the broader group to talk about, in this challenge of knowing relationships are key, and then having transition, and maybe thinking about the transition we may have on our side and the school may have on their side. What are some of the ways that other folks have been handling that transition? I hear Kathy saying, maybe not totally Kathy saying, but that the more relationships you have with the more people on campus, the more deep those relationships are, the better you can weather that transition. So sometimes there might be one teacher champion that's the health teacher that lets you into their class, and that's it. And there's a huge problem when that health teacher gets moved or retires because that was your person. So I think one strategy is just really, like Kathy said, having a coalition of supporters, so building relationships with other folks on campus, even if it's only the PE classes you go into. I think that's one strategy. Would anybody else like to share how they've handled transition, either by pressing *6 to unmute yourself, or you can share in the chat?
This is Devin. I'll just share something briefly. I know for us, when we first were thinking about Curtis Creek Elementary, we hadn't been in there in a very long time. So for us, it was very, very helpful and really essential that we had such a good relationship with the superintendent of schools in our county. And because we were able to kind of start at the top, it really helps because we had such a good relationship with her, and we had built that over, a lot of time. But because we had that relationship with the superintendent of our county, not just the principal of that school or a teacher. That really helped influence our program more because she was able to talk with the school and give them a really good word for us and really share how she felt that school needed this program.
And you don't have to have the perfect answer. You can say, we've done this and that worked, but this didn't really work. And I know this is a funny platform for peer sharing, but I request that you jump in and give it a try. Let's see, Araceli says in the chat, as an agency, we have the individual that's leaving introduce the new employee to the members on campus so that they can get familiar. And I know, I just happen to know in Araceli's program that they had some turnover in their staff maybe a year and a half ago, and then the campus that they work on had some changes in the campus staff that they work with. And Eva, feel free to unmute yourself, Eva Araceli, if you want to contribute through the audio instead of me reading your responses. Eva's in Trinity County. He says that the principal of the high school changed last year. They scheduled a meeting before the school year started and met with him and listened to his opinions and heart for the school to learn about him and what he cared about and connecting their program to what he cares about. And I think that's an important thing too. A part of community assessment, right, is listening. So maybe it's kind of thinking about, new staff as a mini assessment, figuring out who they are and how they see these issues and how you can frame what you're doing in a way that meets both people's goals. So beyond thinking about transition, what are some of the other things that you were hoping to address when you came on the web forum today? I know from other conversations that some people have had challenges with having conservative schools who want them to make drastic changes to how they do education, or that don't want you to address a certain issue that may make it hard to do, specifically sexual violence prevention, which is, what our goal is. And I know that Kathy brought this up a little bit, but I don't know if anyone who's run into that challenge would like to speak about it. And in the meantime, we can have Kathy speak to what she's done in her community, and Devin too, if you have experience with meeting this challenge.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So this year was major. This year was probably one of the biggest years. We've never had as much kind of pushback as we have this year. And the other thing is sometimes it's not the things you think are going to be the button pushing things. Like we had one parent, we do an activity, walk the line, and it's during our empathy sessions, and we don't do we had a question about drugs and alcohol. Have you ever experienced drugs or alcohol addiction in your family? So we come from a point of view that just about every family has that to some extent. And one of our parents got really, really, really mad that we would ask something like that in school, in a public forum. And the interesting thing is that this particular school is kind of in a higher income area. And the principal and the teacher actually were kind of flabbergasted that that was one of the things that the parent would get mad at, or that would get upset about, because, whoa, wait till they start talking about, consent and all that other stuff. So I think it's really a matter of just having folks on your side and meeting with them and building those relationships and just saying, here's the things we need to talk to. Some of the other things that we do a 7th, 8th grade class together, and I'll go in and talk to the teacher and the counselor and say, here's what we want to present to the kids. Now, when you've got a combo class, you've got really immature 7th graders and really mature 8th graders. So what you present to that class may look a lot different than what you're going to present to an 8th grade class, how you say it. But interestingly, schools know that you may not bring it up, but if a kid asks a question, then you can talk about it. So I think that kind of has it going. So when we talked about coercion and consent, we kind of couched it in, we don't talk about, rape or anything like that unless they bring it up. Then we say, that's called sexual assault. So it's really kind of how you talk about it and how you do that. And for the most, sexual assault wasn't the things that parents got upset about. So you never know. And if you have a relationship, usually what I do is I let the teachers handle it, because they're usually really supportive of us, and then they'll talk to parents and they'll kind of handle all that. I mean, we're right there with them because we've supported them in so many other ways. I don't know if that helps, but that's kind of what we've done.
Yeah, and this is Devin. But we had a kind of a similar situation where the counselor, I believe, she was kind of worried about one particular form, and it just talked about, it asked the students to kind of ask themselves if, like sex was okay. So it had, the word sex on it, and it had, kind of, I think it had the word bitch on it as well, like calling another student a bitch. Is that okay? And they were very kind of worried that that was too mature for their 8th grade students, like, I don't know. And so, we ended up changing it. But like Kathy said, if the student asks a question, then you can answer that and kind of talk about it. So that's what we kind of did was, we were able to kind of, the students kind of led the conversation in that direction. So we were able to talk about it. And then for the following year, it wasn't an issue. We could actually use that form because the students had already kind of opened that dialogue about it.
Yeah, and Adele brought up in the chat just talking about sexual assault in general is a challenge that they've been facing because people just don't want to talk about it. Oh, here we have some more in the chat. And again, please feel free to chime in by audio. So let's see. Anadeli, can you come in by audio, or Paula or Amy, and talk a little bit more about what you have here in the chat?
This is Paula.
Oh, Paula, hello.
Hey. So we had, I put in the chat, we had an issue where a principal, we had been going in and doing sexual harassment programs every year, and he asked us if we could no longer call it sexual harassment, not use the word sexual, and then went on to specifically talk about, to please not talk about issues around homophobia. And the approach that worked with that particular principal, and I found it helpful with lots of other administrative types, is to, in a, not in a confrontational way, but to just get in a conversation that helps them see where their liabilities are, since liability is a word that principals and school districts tend to respond to. So talking about how important it is, not just, of course, we think it's important that the students have this information, but that as a principal that he would actually be risking something for himself by not supporting a program around something that the kids have a right to know about. So I think it's knowing your audience and adjusting your approach to the things underlying whatever the complaint or issue that the person is bringing forward, thinking about what position they're in. So principals fear things like parent response, and so just thinking about what's behind their the concern that they're bringing forward and approaching them based on their own, what language and what situations they're most concerned about. And in that case, I mean, the truth was he's a very homophobic person. He's no longer there, so that's helpful. But even with his own personal issues, he responded to the idea of, oh, you mean like the school could face some liability issue if we show how clear the discrimination is? So anyway, that's just a suggestion.
Oh, so specific to that, Enrique asked if leveraging the California Healthy Youth Act requirements is helping. Is anyone doing that? And actually, Enrique, if you could come in on the audio and just give like a quick explanation of what that is in case folks don't know. And maybe you could give us an idea if you know of other programs that are leveraging that. Can you press star 6? Oh, I hear you now, I think. Enrique, are you able to press star 6? Oh, okay, so she's listening on the computer. So the California Healthy Youth Act, and I probably won't do a great job of a comprehensive definition of this. Oh, here we go. Requires integrated HIV prevention and comprehensive sexual health education in all public middle and high schools in California. It also requires education on sexual harassment, sexual assault, adolescent relationship abuse, intimate partner violence, and sex trafficking. So this is a way that you could use this as a requirement of schools to leverage your own program and kind of present it. We had a webinar with Emily Austin from Calcasa on this, and perhaps, you know, if people are interested, we could do it again, or I could send it out. But this is a way that you could leverage, you know, something with the school to say, look, you need to do this. You have a requirement to do this, and we can help. So kind of, you know, along with the liability piece that Paula brought up that was appropriate to use as leverage, you know, this is a way that maybe you can frame an issue of you being able to, your program being able to help the school by covering some of these issues because we're experts and, you know, and their teachers have a lot to do and you could do this for them. So that might be something that you can leverage as a I can help you with your goals, but also as a here's a requirement that you have. Is anyone else doing that? And yeah, go ahead.
Jesse, this is Kathy. So something interesting happened this year. Our teachers, our junior high teachers, went to a training and came back all excited because they had this new sexual health program because they have to teach sex ed. And one of my teachers, one of our biggest supporters said, I sat there with the principal and all the 7th, 8th grade teachers and would look at them and go, we talk about this and teach. We talk about this and teach. So it really, the things we do fit really perfectly into that. And like I said in my little presentation, there's only like one, I forget if it's like a page or a page and a half on healthy relationships. So it doesn't really delve into it. It delves into a lot of the science, STIs, all that, but not really healthy relationships. And that's where I think we are really perfect for that. Because I always tell the kids, teacher talks about science, we talk about feelings, we talk about all this other stuff. So it fits perfectly into that. And I think we're going to really expand that this year. And we're actually thinking of calling our program Healthy Relationships Program for our middle school. So.
Great. And Paula added in, and this also, I think, connects back to really what somebody else said about, meeting the new person and talking to them about their goals and what they think. And Paula, I can let you speak for yourself since you're also on the audio, but that's been a plus and a minus. You have to really think about when you use the sexual health or the Sexual Health Act.
Yeah, this is Paula, and that was a conversation that just came up at a task force that we're part of, the County Sexual Health Task Force, and recognizing that, for example, now the way it's been working is that Planned Parenthood tends to go in and do several days of a program in many of the schools, and we go in and do components over the course of several days that are covering different material, all of which that needs to be covered under the Act. And we've been doing that for many, many years, way before this Act. But there are also schools that are particularly resistant to Planned Parenthood. And so the Sexual Health Task Force is looking to broaden the collaboration, bring in additional partners for the schools that are resistant to Planned Parenthood. What might they work better with someone else, and doing trainings for the teachers to cover so that those schools that don't want an entity like Planned Parenthood coming in, being able to train their educators through the task force so that they at least cover the required elements of sex ed, regardless of their bias around choice and all those things. And I think that it's going to be helpful to more consciously work together to coordinate the timing, which is really challenging, like for each partner who is going to cover certain components to coordinate scheduling so that it falls in an appropriate kind of timeline. But that's what we're thinking about, is that we don't have the funds, frankly, to cover everything that's required in the Sexual Health Act. But, if we can partner, then we can accomplish it.
Yeah, so the partnering on different pieces of that, and I know there's some new curricula coming, out, or there's more and more, I think, intersections between sexual health and sexual violence prevention, which of course is of course like a duh. Of course those go together. And I see Nancy Ramsey's comment in here. And Nancy, I wonder if you can join us by audio, because you have partnered with other organizations to teach pieces of curriculum. so Nancy said, I'll give her a chance to maybe come on by using *6, but Nancy is at DVSAC in Grass Valley, and they sat on a countywide quarterly meeting for 18 months, facilitated by the superintendent of schools, and their prevention team had a big impact on the directions that the committee took. Ultimately, they chose Positive Prevention Plus for their curriculum, and they asked DVSAC to teach several portions of it. Nancy, are you able to chime in on the text? Oh, you're not on the phone. Oh, I see the problem here. People didn't call in. They're listening online. So hopefully we'll put a clear direction for folks to call in so that we can be on audio. But I remember this in talks with DVSAC of, you know, really getting to sit down with the superintendent while they were choosing a new sexual health curriculum for the schools. And so that was a great opportunity. I think, I'm not speaking for them, I'm speaking for myself, that I thought that that was a really great opportunity to be invited to participate on the creation of that, on really looking at different pieces and being able to influence that. So I think that's a way to make positive change on the school system by influencing their curriculum. And then Paula notes that there's some things that aren't covered in Positive Prevention Plus, which we all can, which we can fill in those gaps too. If we're having the opportunity to partner, then we can take those curricula and look at them and say, okay, well, yeah, this is great. And then, you know, from our area of expertise, we can see that these things are missing and then add those in. And Nancy was appreciative of them to ask us to be on the team. And that's a great, you know, way to meet our goals of creating, you know, community policy systems change in the communities that we're working with, that we're implementing RPE in, because that changing the curriculum or influencing the curriculum changes, you know, what the whole school is learning, what the teachers are being trained on potentially. So I know Anna Deli was way back talking about some challenges, and she was able to call in. And Anna Deli, I don't know if you are able to chime in at this point. And you were talking about some challenges with presenting your safe mapping results. Hi, thank you. Hi, thank you.
Hi, Jessie. How you doing?
Hi, thank you. Hi, Jessie. Good. Oh, we're echoing.
Give me one second. Sorry, that's me.
Yeah.
That's me on my end.
No, yeah, you just, there you go. Okay.
Okay. Are we doing better?
Yep, we're perfect now.
Perfect. Hello, everybody. So then what we were facing is we went ahead and we incorporated the face mapping last spring in 2016. And now we have the results, and we have presented to our staff, to not our staff, but the school staff, like the classified, to the teachers and classified staff. And we just, a couple of days ago, we presented to our ASB group, our leadership group, and we're getting a little bit of pushback to present to the school site council and our board of directors and our safety committee. Last February, when we did the teen dating violence, we did an event on campus, and I spoke to the principal, and he was supportive, but instead of saying like love is, he wanted us to kind of align it to the Baylor code, which it was respect, because he said, well, I think love is really important for us to acknowledge and for have kids write down what love is, but he was afraid that kids were just going to go ahead and take it completely off subject. So what we did is we did respect, and we have a pretty good buy-in from staff, from teachers and students. It's just on the safe mapping, which is getting a lot of pushback, where yesterday the vice principal came up to me and said, I'm getting some pushback. They don't want you to come and present. So he said, it's really good information. All the data, it's positive, it's awesome. So what he's going to do is he's going to go ahead and create a focus group for us. And I told him, I said, well, thank you very much. I said, but would it be possible for our group to have like representation of everybody? I'm talking about admin, staff, classified teachers, classified staff, students, parents, just everybody, so that we can get everybody's different perspective and buy-in. So we'll see how that turns out to be. Hello.
I know there's some other, you know how I feel. Yeah. So I know there's some other organizations who've done mapping specifically. You know, Devin talked about mapping, and maybe they can talk about who they presented those results to, how they might have framed their results or any of the data depending on who they were presenting to, anything like that.
This is Devin. I can just share really quickly that we presented it to the principal directly with the counselor, because what we found in the mapping was that a lot of students marked certain teachers' areas as unsafe because certain students, felt unsafe with certain teachers. So we decided, instead of presenting it to everyone, we figured that maybe it would just be best to present it to the principal and then the counselor, and then they can talk about it with the teachers as necessary, because we didn't want anyone to, take offense and, anything like that, because we did share with one teacher that his classroom, for some of the students, it was not considered that safe of a space, and he was kind of taken back by that. So we just decided to present it just to the principal and to the counselor, and that worked for us.
Okay, does anyone else want to share about how it may not be specific to mapping, but mapping results, but how they might frame, well, we talked about this a little bit already, but anything in addition to how they might frame topics or who they might decide to strategically go to build allies?
Hey, Jesse, this is Claudia from Family Services. Good
afternoon,
everyone. Hi. And when we did our mapping, I think it was maybe last year, the year before. But when we did it, first we presented to administration, and we talked to the students about what pushback we may get. And we always talk about, if we are going to say, like, not necessarily a complaint or maybe bring up some bad news, what is our solution to it? So we kind of prepared, like, we had the students think of that as well. Like, so what are we going to do about it? What would you require from your, peers? Because we had a feeling, and it sure did happen. One of the spots that the gentleman said that was a little dangerous was, like, the bathrooms and the locker rooms. well, our assistant principal is in charge of surveilling those. And so he was offended, to put it lightly, a little bit. I noticed that he got defensive. And so I was like, that's a great, one person can't do it all. So this is the solution. And our kids just, went into that, like, we had practiced, like, any pushback we would get. And so then that made them feel comfortable. In the first room, we had the counselors, the principal, admin, so any office staff. And then after we did it with them, we presented to the entire staff a couple weeks later. And so we were able to even, work out a couple of the concerns that they may have or the questions that they may have. So when we did present it to the staff, it was a little more, we were more prepared and filtered by them.
That's great. So that's really great strategic thinking about, how to deliver your message and kind of even like a communications plan. Okay, we're anticipating that this might be, problematic or be a challenge somewhere. So we're going to go here, and I think that is so smart to really think about that communication strategically. I want to point out that Enrica posted in the chat, and we'll pull off any resources that come up and send them in a follow-up email. But I want to point out that Enrica posted a link of reviewed curricula that, and it shows compliance and gaps, and that's a review of curriculum and whether it's in compliance with the California Healthy Youth Act. So thank you for that, Enrica. And Eva's in the chat box, and she is asking about whether other people are having issues with sexting and that they have been dealing with this in their community and have had some students charged with distributing child pornography, which, I think it's good to see that some people are, perpetrators being held accountable, which doesn't always happen. But is anyone else working with this issue specifically? And you make a comment that it's not often, that you're not seeing it necessarily covered in curricula, even though it's a pressing issue coming up, and certainly with internet and social media. But I think our curricula is always behind. Not always, but it's often behind in development. So anyone have contributed? Oh, hello, Kathy. Yeah.
This is Kathy. Thank you for bringing that up, Eva. It was huge at our schools this year, in all of our schools. It's almost like this was a big thing on the East Coast a couple of years ago, and then it kind of travels to the West Coast, and then it gets to the rural areas. So we're always a year or two behind. It was huge this year. It was huge. In fact, we had several phone calls, and we had teachers who asked us to address this. So we did a whole session on sexting. We're really fortunate to have a paralegal working with us, and she kind of did up a little legal thing for us, and we talked to the kids. But one of the things that we're up against is that these kids, the ages that we teach, the 7th and 8th graders, they live right in front of their faces, and they don't get the ramifications of doing something like that. So what I've done with the teachers is talk to them and just said we just need to keep talking about it with all the kids, about sexting and sending pictures and things like that. But I would love to hear if anybody has like some strategies around sexting besides saying, this is really bad.
Hey, Jessie, it's Claudia again. Sorry. For our school, we did have that problem as well, and we kind of did like a collaborative effort. The school was like, hey, since you're the experts, can you guys talk about this? And I was like, yeah. And so we reeled in also our local PD, so the chief of police, as well as our district attorney's office, and we just combined, did an entire presentation to the whole school. So each grade went in there, and then we had our students also present. So then we're like, these are the experts. So if something's happening to you or you need to know your options, come to these people. These are leaders on campus. And, you know, unfortunately they had, like, it turned into a case, and that's why the police officer or police chief was so about it. But it was kind of nice to know, like, it made us feel even more legit on campus.
Thank you. And Paula is also talking about a situation in her community, and talking about the importance of educating law enforcement and the DA's office. So I think as those issues come up, addressing them. Yeah, go ahead. Thank you.
May I chime in really fast? I'm sorry. This is
yes,
Anna Lily with Community Solutions. Roughly about 2 weeks ago or so, we had a student who came up to me and said, would it be possible for me to talk to you? And I spoke to her, and then she said, you know, there's this girl that I know on campus. I don't talk to her because she's my current boyfriend's ex-girlfriend. But she took a picture, and then that picture is going everywhere. Like, everybody's talking about it. And so that information came to me. I spoke to the school admin, and then I also spoke to our school resource officer. And he said, well, we could go ahead and talk to the student just to provide service and see how she feels and see if she's willing to make a report. And I also spoke to my supervisor. So then what I did is I called the student in, and the resource officer was kind of like on standby. He wasn't there with me inside of the room. He just said, if you need me, please let me know. So what I did is I just talked to the student, and I let her know that that was child pornography, her taking that picture and everybody else having it, and how she felt about it. So we talked, and then at the end, she did say she didn't want to make a report, but she did want her to talk to the school resource officer just for him to come in. So that's when I called him in. He came in, and we were able to chat with this student, with this young girl, and we just gave her all the resources, and we told her, hey, you know what, this is what it is. And also on our curriculum, the In Touch with Teens curriculum that we do, our program, where we talk about social media, we talk about child pornography. We talk about how kids tend to just take a picture and they think, okay, I'm going to put it on Snapchat or one of their social media sites that they currently use, and they think just by them deleting it that it's going to be off, like nobody's going to have access to it. And that's where we tell them, it's like everything that you post on social media, even though you think that you're going to delete it and it's no longer going to be there, it's there. So we raise awareness about this around campus. That's what we do.
Great, thanks. So I just want to give a time check that we have just a few minutes left. And so if anyone has something that they'd like to bring up, or there was something in the chat that I missed, this is the time to do it. So I think some of the highlights today have been about building strong relationships, framing our communication and goals in a way that matches the school's goals and needs, looking at leveraging some of our resources like the California Healthy Kids Survey, like the California Healthy Youth Act, partnerships in implementing programs, getting in on the ground floor of looking at different curricula so that we can influence that with our own expertise and goals. A little bit of issue spotting, right, with the texting and how to kind of gather stakeholders around that to, you know, maybe it's not part of your comprehensive program, but maybe, you know, maybe you need to take some time to address a specific issue coming up with the appropriate people. So I appreciate everyone coming together today. I'm looking at the chat to see if anybody goes, oh, I want to talk about this, but I don't see anybody. I want to invite quickly, I know Enrica is not on the phone, which makes me think that maybe Francisco is not either, but I want to give them a chance to pop in, even in the chat, with any updates or announcements or anything you'd like to give. I didn't ask them to do that ahead of time, so they may not actually have anything. But I do know that there is a registration for the webinar out for looking at the new National Intimate Partner Sexual Violence Survey. So you can look for that email from Jeannie Galarpi that came out to participate in that on May 17th. I also think we have not passed up yet the, I could be wrong about this, so I'm going to say it anyway, but you know there was also a webinar offered on mandated reporting in schools. That was going to be facilitated by Emily Austin from CalCASA, and I think that is still upcoming. Anyone can please correct me in the chat if that has not come out yet, but look for those if you're interested. The NISPIS, the National Intimate Partner and Sexual Violence Survey, is great data to have. It's not, of course, local, but they do break it down into statewide data. So perhaps comparing your local data to statewide data might be something. I'll repeat myself on the first webinar. Yes. Jeannie Galarpi sent out an email announcement from Francisco, and Prevent Connect is doing a webinar on the newly released National Intimate Partner and Sexual Violence Survey State Report. So that's going to be May 17th from 11 to 12:30. So it's hosted by us, CalCASA, the National Sexual Violence Resource Center, and the National Resource Center on Domestic Violence. So the CDC is going to be on this report describing some of the findings, and then you can kind of get the summary of results for California to be able to use. And let's see, and then Enrica has the Regional Community Mobilization Meeting happening in Chico. I say it like that, Chico, because that's around where I'm from. I wish I could go just to be able to go back and visit. On June 28th, so she will send the invitation out. You know, in our, Anadeli's asking about getting an invitation to that webinar, and Megan and I can forward that to you. Actually, let me see if I can put it right here in the chat, right? That would be easy. And, well, I don't know if I can. Yeah, I can. And maybe somebody could chime in about that, about the mandated reporting on campus webinar, because I can't. This link that I just posted in the chat is for the survey, the National Intimate Partner Violence Survey. Oh, great. Mandated reporting. Here we go. Thank you. Ooh, that was a long one. Okay. Oh, Francisco, great. So Francisco has posted the invitation for the mandated reporting in schools webinar. Oh, that's also on May 17th. So May 17th will be your professional development day. So there's a lot of great resources there. And Megan or I will send that out in a follow-up email for you so that you have those links. So am I missing anything in the chat? Okay, so I would like to thank all of you for coming on with us today, for participating in the conversation, despite the fact that this is a not ideal place for a lot of great peer communication. But I think we got a lot of valuable insight from one another. And so I appreciate that. I appreciate Kathy and Devin coming on and talking to us about their programs and how they work within their communities. And I want to pass the floor to Megan to just give you some wrap-up information. So thanks, everyone.
Hello, everyone. And yes, you know what I'm about to talk about, the hub, where we're going to have all of these resources posted. So I will be sending out a follow-up resource sheet with all of the lovely resources we just described. And you will be able to access the recording of this webinar hopefully by the end of the day. That is my personal goal, but if technology is not willing, then you'll definitely have it by the end of next week. I'll be posting a PDF of this PowerPoint slide. In fact, I think I already put it up there. And if you have any other requests for resources or want to contribute to the list that I'm going to be sending out, please feel free to do so. In addition, we also are working on our hotel registration, so I just want to give a little reminder to everyone. Please feel free to reach out if you can't find your reservation links for hotels, and I will be more than happy to help you out with that. But those are all the updates that I have. Please let us know if you have any comments, concerns, or questions, and our contact information, in case you haven't already heard from us many, many times, is right over here. And thank you so much to our presenters and everyone for joining us today, and thank you for all of your wonderful comments in the chat. We definitely do try and monitor that and pull from those questions and comments on there. I think next time we definitely will be clearer about having everyone call in if possible. I know sometimes some of us aren't able to access our phones, or you're not able to do so in a smaller office space. But I think for the purposes of these web forums, that's the most ideal situation. And just let us know if there's anything we can do to help that along. So thank you, everyone. And I see Enrica is posting more resources. Thank you, Enrica.
And we'll pull those off. So we'll pull those off and send them in a follow-up. That's the link to the Chico meeting. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.